Hello.
Thank you for taking your time to attend this webinar. My name is Winnie Dlamini. Apologies for the delay due to load shedding. Before we start, I will introduce our branch executive members, which is our chairperson, Mr. Martin Nokwane, our chair-elect, Ms. Tepiso Ratwana, and our PRO, Mr. Ugo Okoli, and our treasurer, Miss Janet Matsapala. I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure whether it's O. And lastly, our secretary, Miss Libohang Mail. Thank you so much for taking your time again to join us on this webinar, which is about the relevance of LIS schools in South Africa and how fourth industrial revolution has shaped the profession. There are a lot of changes that we've seen within our libraries, within our profession. And it's really is concerning sometimes that all the time we hear people talking of skills, we hear a lot, and we see technology is taking the industry by the storm. So we're just checking the relevance. So before any further delay, I will introduce our chief director, who's gonna lay a foundation on this topic, Dr. Matthew Moyo, who is our chief director at the NW Libraries. He joined the NW Library, it's been years now, and he has 25 years of experience within the information science profession. Dr. Moyo has also lectured in information science in the past. He holds a doctoral degree in library and information science, as well as leadership qualifications. He has read papers and national, international conferences, at national and international conferences, I'm sorry about that, as well as serving as a reviewer for various journals and examiner for a number of universities. Dr. Matthew, his research interests are in the areas of information literacy, research data management, user behavior, and governance or management, among others. He is also passionate about mentorship and capacity building. We thank you, Dr. Moyo, for joining us today and for participating in this webinar, as we know that you've got a lot of experience, and especially since you were a lecturer, you still also mentoring most of us within NWU, especially on our studies. There's a lot that you've been doing, and thank you for taking your time to join us today. So in order to understand as well as the relevance, and also to just lay foundation and also introduce our guest speaker for today, who will be presenting. Thank you so much. Over to you, Dr. Moy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Winile, and greetings to all our guests who have joined us this afternoon. And thank you again, Winile, for the introductions. To our delegates joining us this afternoon from the province, as introduced by Winile, and from all over the country and beyond, good afternoon. It is indeed my greatest pleasure to welcome you all to this event organized by our LIASA Northwest branch. I want to thank the branch leadership as led by Mr. Martin Nokwane and his team for putting this event together for us to come and share, learn, and network with each other. This event is one of the many events organized by different LIASA branches and interest groups across the country with a view to promote the culture of learning. On this note, I also want to thank the LIASA National Executive for championing this noble cause. In an era characterized by a lot of changes you will never go wrong with skills acquisition. I hope that all our LIASA members are taking full advantage of all the offerings of the LIASA Academy, where LIASA members learn. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here this afternoon to listen to what appears to be a very exciting topic on the relevance of LIS schools in South Africa and how the fourth industrial revolution has shaped the profession. I want to stand afar from this topic and pose a question. How has the fourth industrial revolution, if not the 5IR, impacted our libraries? We have certainly witnessed a number of changes that have affected our collections, the way we conduct our loans, our staff and user skills, our user preferences, which have shifted greatly, our research support, which has also shifted, and so has our teaching and learning support. Our technological tools have also shifted. We have witnessed the emergence of new tools, new technologies. We have literally, in most cases, delegated our knowledge to machines. Now, the question to ask is, how are our LIS schools helping us to keep abreast of all these changes? And I'm glad to see a number of our LIS professors here joining us this afternoon. Are they transforming? This is in relation to LIS schools. Are they transforming their curriculums through perhaps a recalculation and through introduction of new modules and courses? Our keynote speaker will address some of these issues. So I want to invite all of you to sit back and relax and listen to our guest speaker, whom I have the pleasure to introduce to you this afternoon. So our guest speaker is none other than Dr. Andy Swamfengu, who is a lecturer in the Department of Knowledge and Information Stewardship in the Humanities faculty at the University of Cape Town, South Africa. Dr. Mfengu holds a master's degree from the University of Cape Town and has recently completed her doctoral studies at the same institution. Andy Swa is an emerging scholar in the area of research impact assessment, focusing on the development of a more holistic framework for such assessment that is relevant to transformative and decolonizing contexts. She is immediate past vice chair for library education and training institutions of the African Library and Information Associations and Institutions, AFLIA, and the chapter assembly representative for the Africa chapter of the Association of Information Science and Technology. She is an editorial board member of the African Journal of Library Archives and Information Science. She is a recipient of the prestigious South African National Research Foundation funded Black Academics Advancement Program Fellowship for 2021 to 2020. Dr. Mfengu speaks to us, as I've already indicated, about LIS schools in the fourth industrial revolution in terms of their role, in terms of their continued relevance in ensuring that the graduates that are coming from our LIS schools are well equipped with the relevant skills that we need as the library sector in South Africa and beyond. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Dr. Andy Swamfengu as she opens her mic to speak to us. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Moyo, and hi, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity and thank you for that introduction. And thank you to Martin and the Northwest Executive for the opportunity to share on LIS schools and also how 4IR is affecting the space. I will just share my presentation in a moment. I think just to probably, before I present what I've planned for today. Some disclaimers. A lot of what I'll be presenting or sharing today will be drawing from my own personal narratives as an emerging scholar and also a librarian who was, I think I've seen a lot of these changes. I also have experienced also in my career as a librarian, but also now as a teacher, and also drawing on also the scholarship that has been published in this area. We've got a good number of professors in the room already, and also in South Africa and abroad that have done great work in this space that one cannot speak about LIS education without speaking to the works that have been done before, whether we're talking about this revolution or the next one. So we're looking at LIS education in South Africa and how 4IR has shaped the profession, and I've decided to leave out relevance, and hopefully that will be apparent at the end why I thought not just speak about relevance, but speak about it, almost see it as a whole holistically, and just look at how the different aspects that speak to what LIS schools are doing and how it's shaping our graduates and how it's shaping the profession. So I'll be looking at it holistically, and obviously relevance is an important aspect, but I think it's more than just relevance, and I'm hoping that will be apparent later when we talk when I talk through the presentation. When my time is almost, when I have 5 minutes or so, please someone signal to me, maybe have you if you switch on your video, I'll notice so that I can know when my time is almost finishing. So before I speak to the aspects I'll focus on, I thought it was important to kind of start with some background to introduce the topic or to where we at currently as LIS schools and also as the profession, to I guess to get everyone on the same page before we can talk about how are we responding, what are we doing, are we doing it well, are there any gaps, and so on. So, the library and information services and also as a discipline have seen many revolutions and which have transformed how information professionals support their communities' development. And obviously, these recent revolutions, including 4IR, which is regarded as a knowledge revolution, have also brought about newer opportunities and challenges to the profession. And this is not something that is new. Emerging technologies, they've always influenced LIS. And this is not, 4IR is not any different from the revolutions that have passed before. So while I will speak to the different disruptions, innovative disruptions that we've seen, and might not necessarily focus on 4IR, but I see them as almost doing the same thing. But obviously, 4IR does it differently from the previous revolutions that we've seen. And I'll be drawing on scholars that have looked at different innovations that have influenced our field and also that have influenced LIS education and how LIS schools in South Africa and globally have responded to that. So we're not just looking at just 4IR alone, but also seeing how the different technologies have influenced what we do as LIS professionals and also educators. And obviously, as a result of this speed of change, these revolutions, we've seen that the role of LIS professionals took a new shape. LIS professionals or library professionals, they require special competencies apart from the core knowledge, skills and practices of librarianship. And we'll speak to the core knowledge of librarianship, because that's important for us to start there as we embed our and add technology in the different aspects. It's important not to miss out those core knowledge and skills from the profession. But obviously, we are recognizing that those core knowledge and skills, they're not enough. Those core competencies that we whether it's from cataloging, metadata, and classification. We know as LIS professionals that one needs also some special competencies because of how technology has influenced the services that are provided in libraries these days, and also how librarians do their work. I mean, we are meeting on Zoom. In the past, a lot of the meetings would be face-to-face. So we have to acknowledge, and obviously we cannot factor in, we have to factor in the influence and the impact that technology is having on how we do things. And obviously also the speed of change has created a new librarian and also a new librarian landscape. And thus, these innovations have impacted the roles and competencies of LIS professionals. And this is something that, I mean, has been written about already from 2011. And I think this is something that's going to continue. 2018, there's been lots of work published around this area and how ICTs have dramatically transformed LIS and how the librarian landscape has changed. And then speaking to also the skills, the knowledge, the competencies that are required for librarians to function and operate in this space. And obviously then these rapidly evolving ICTs, they have dramatically transformed library and information services. And authors like Raju in her study in 2021 spoke about how these evolving ICTs have dramatically transformed LIS spaces, and how in turn this has impacted not only the technological, but also the pedagogical knowledge, the skills and competency requirements for the profession. So for librarians practicing in this space. So we're not just talking about the technological needs, but also the knowledge, skill, the pedagogical knowledge, the skills and competencies that are required for librarians have been shifting. This is not new with just 4IR, but over the years, this shift, we've observed this shift. And I think with 4IR, we probably as librarians have to consider LIS schools, the same thing that we've done with the other revolutions, but obviously doing it differently. And we will draw on also works that have been published, also showing what students would like to see in curriculum in LIS schools and so on. And obviously, I mean, this in terms of these changes as a result of technology and evolutions that are brought around with technology. Obviously, this raises questions about competencies in terms of LIS professionals, the competencies they require librarians and other professionals working in the space to be effective and also efficient in this changing environment. And Ochola and Ochola 2020 spoke about how 4IR and other emerging technologies cannot occur without sufficient contextualization. And I'm hoping throughout this presentation, I'm going to be able to speak to the conceptualization, but also how we can contextualize all those responses and changes by LIS schools and how that relates to the librarian professionals or any practicing professionals in the space. And obviously with LIS curriculum, there's been a call for LIS curriculum to refocus, to respond to appropriately to this knowledge and skills gap. And we've seen, I mean, when I started as a librarian, what I did back then in libraries, we're publishing, I mean, open access publishing was a new thing. Data management was a new thing. Librarians had to do that. But when I was training doing my PG dip, that was not necessarily what was in the curriculum. And I think we've seen this over the years where whether one trained 5-10 years ago, what was in the curriculum back then and what is actually expected of the practicing professionals we've seen quite a significant gap. And obviously I don't think there's one approach of going about in that space on how LIS curriculum can respond. There's not necessarily one approach. We know as much as the curriculum might be revised and changed, we need a multifaceted approach on how one can ensure that librarians that are practicing, they have the necessary skills to effectively and efficiently navigate this changing environment. But I think the question of competencies has been one that has come up quite a lot, and hopefully through this presentation, I'll speak to those aspects. And just before we proceed, before I proceed, so when we're looking at competency, so competency is understood as a cluster of, or group of knowledge, skills, personal attributes that enable an individual to efficiently and effectively carry out a job or a task. So at times, I might just refer to competency, not necessarily knowledge and skills, but I'm referring to that cluster that one would need in the case of 4IR to be able to navigate the space to do a particular job and so on. And just in continuing in laying a foundation, so we know in terms of emerging technologies in the digital information landscape, this has greatly influenced the competencies that are necessary and the competencies that are required of LIS professionals. But obviously also it's not just LIS professionals, it's scholars in this space and educators, all those different stakeholders, they have to navigate this highly digitized, it's an evolving space, it's technology-driven global information environment. And I think we are now talking 4IR, but the same would apply when we go to the fifth revolution and so on, that we still need to, as professionals, as scholars and educators, we still need to continuously and evolve, continuously our competencies need to continuously evolve so we can navigate this space. I mean, we talk about change. We know change is the only constant, so we have to constantly find ways to actually respond and navigate the space. But I think also it's important that we can draw from each other, draw from best practices and institutions that might be doing better than others. That's also something I'll just touch on. And there's been lots of scholars that have spoken about the need for LIS education and training in South Africa, the need for it to be repositioned and reimagined to actively respond to this digital environment, to create lifelong learning. We know, I mean, in the past 5 years and more, this is something that how our LIS schools at times focused on the traditional skills and not necessarily embedding enough the IT and the technical skills that are required by these current revolutions, and how we also need to reimagine. And at times that might be a revision of a course that's currently happening, or it might be partnership with a lot of institutions and libraries that are already doing have adopted quite a lot of these technologies, and then where students can, and even academics can work together in that space. And generally, I mean, we've seen that technological innovations have led to an increase in demand for information technology skills in the contemporary library and information agencies. I think that this is not a question, but it is something we are seeing and experiencing in libraries across, whether one is an academic, public, special, and the different library and information agencies around. There is that increase in terms of the demand for IT skills, but I think it's important that we contextualize those within LIS and within our discipline and our values that we have as a discipline. And this is speaking to also the increased need for pedagogical skills on part of LIS professionals, for them to be able to empower users with knowledge, skills to navigate this complex digital information terrain. So it's not just the demand of embedding LIS skills for the librarians to be able to function in the space, but also librarians are expected to be teachers. We know now, I mean, we've been talking 4IR, but we know within that AI and AI generative tools has actually kind of overtaken 4IR, and we see a lot of work and even research coming around then. Librarians and other LIS professionals, they're expected to train, they're expected to guide users around the use of AI and other technologies. And I think this is something that's not new for librarians. This is something, I think, that extending that role that librarians have been doing for a while, for forever actually, in terms of information literacy, digital literacy, but now extending this in this new technologies that have been adopted or that are around and our users want to use and engage with. So in essence, I think one cannot talk about how libraries are responding or repositioning without starting with what are our core competencies and how that can help us and better position us as a profession in terms of embracing 4IR and other disruptive technologies. So then in terms of looking at how LIS schools are responding, I'll focus on those 4 aspects, looking at what are our core competencies, what are the new profiles and new skills that's expected of librarians and professionals in the space, and also looking at education, training, and needs from the stakeholders, and also what are the responses locally and also internationally in the space, and what can we do together in this forum and in this space. So we know, I mean, LIS profession, we've got a long history, and there's certain things that I think as a profession we've been doing very well. But also, I think we recognizing that our environment is changing as a result of technology, and the need to embed technology in what we do rather than sticking to the traditional aspects. And this is in reference to what is referred to as a pluralist information environment, which just speaks to a wide variety or diverse and often at times conflicting viewpoints, sources of information, and perspectives that coexist and are easily accessible to individuals. So librarians and LIS professionals are existing in this pluralist environment. And obviously we need certain skills beyond the core competencies to navigate this space. And I mean, and there's been lots of work written about how the need to blend our skills as professionals. So because this environment, I mean, it requires to work offline, online, to understand technologies, but also work with our users, which some might not want to be assisted by a robot, but they might want that librarian to help them throughout. So in essence, we want librarians not just to be tech savvy, but we want them to actually also be, emotional intelligence, to be able to work with users. And speaking to the pluralist information environment, so it requires a blend of our traditional LIS knowledge and skills, but we're blending those with IT pedagogical competencies to respond to disruptive innovations. And 4IR is one of those. And come 5 years or 10 years down the line, that we're probably going to have another innovation. However, I think the core principles do not change. So, I mean, we're still going to be doing things like your cataloging, things like your classification, if you see that image. And it just, I mean, it speaks to the different core competencies or core knowledge areas that we would do as librarians. And building on those, I mean, we can blend them with IT, we can blend them with other pedagogical competencies to be able to navigate this pluralist environment. So attempting to blend IT in terms of our teaching, whether we're teaching cataloging and classification. We know these days, I mean, a lot of these are web-based, whether it's your web GUI and all of them. We hardly see now students being trained using the physical books. A lot of it is web-based, and that is a way, I mean, we can see even before what we call now 4IR, even before where a lot of that was merging. It was not necessarily working in one way, but we were actually been blurring the lines between the physical and the online space. And also a lot of many of our activities, I mean, we know that they've been traditional, but we can see now there's quite a lot of integration of technology in our traditional things that we've been doing as libraries, where now one can consult with the librarian virtually. And this is not just because of COVID, but I think also the users are now open to the idea because of COVID. But in the past, I mean, we know our users would generally want to come into the library. And obviously, when one looks at 4IR, one would not necessarily just look at it from one aspect. We know there's the very technical aspect of it, where we're talking robots, programming, big data, but also a lot of also that has to do with 4IR is things that are already happening in our libraries because of how one is utilizing the data from circulation to acquisitions, and how those systems are speaking to each other, and users can get in essence recommendations and stuff like that. I mean, this is also actually 4IR in action, but also obviously we know that there's different levels. And I think it's important to also acknowledge this is something that's probably not as foreign, but we can see the value of automation. And I think as a discipline, it's important to be part of this and take advantage of these opportunities, but contextualizing them in our space. And so, I mean, this is just some of the IT knowledge and skills that librarians, I mean, this study was looking at academic librarians would like for it to be embedded in LIS courses. So not just focusing on the cataloging, classification, indexing, and so on. Because I mean, we know now with 4RR, a lot of that, if we've got good data or our data is clean, we can actually program it. We can have systems that can automate those processes. And then as librarians, one can focus, or just LIS professionals, one can focus then on the other aspects. One can focus on enriching that data rather than doing the actual classification or abstracts and so on. But also, this is so referring to some of the IT knowledge skills that are important in terms of librarianship and embedding in what we do as for LIS professionals. And also, I mean, in LIS degrees, I think this is some of the skills that have been identified to be crucial. Programming, obviously, this is something that's crucial. Information architecture, coding, database understanding, and how relational databases would work. Web design, HTML, and we've seen a lot of programs also that are embedding this particular knowledge and skills, and I think specifically the knowledge. We know at times with skills, it would depend on also the context of the institution, the affordability, the resources available for one to actually have the experience in terms of some of the tools that one would need to purchase and so on. But I know with our PGDIP, I know something we've been looking at quite a lot is actually not just the HTML and understanding and embedding technology, but also programming. And I think a lot of schools have considered hiring computer scientists, not just LIS graduates, but people in information systems and IT, in order to teach things like your programming, like your XML. But also, I think we've seen also where some schools are actually opting for the LIS academics to learn the skills and rather contextualize them and be the ones that teach it rather than a computer scientist, because we know how librarians and other LIS professionals would apply this would be completely different from computer science, because in that understanding of the discipline is quite important. And we know LIS is quite interdisciplinary, and this is something that one can learn and actually we can teach to our students. And I thought it was also important to point out to some of the preferred IT knowledge and skills that a lot of academic librarians in this study would like to see, but they're not skills are not offered by degrees that we offer in our country. And it was interesting to see how instructional design came up top. I mean, previously we saw a lot of your programming, HTML, some other technical computer-related skills coming up, but not necessarily things like your lesson planning, instructional design. And it just shows that as a discipline, as much as we have that online space, or we can actually do things virtually, but also we still deal with people, whether in a physical space or online. So that instructional design and some of the softer skills, we've seen it becoming quite important. So that teaching, whether one is teaching in person or online, not just for the educators, but also for LIS professionals, because we see that information literacy, I mean, this was in the earlier days where that teaching was applied by librarians. And I think now that role is extending, and we probably need more of it in terms of even AI literacy. So how can librarians be equipped, or actually librarians equip users in terms of AI literacy, especially in academic institutions where this has been a question that has come up with regards to AI and assessment. But I mean, we can see a number of skills and presentation skills and so on, digital literacy. And this is something that, I mean, a lot of the librarians who are practicing would like to see being embedded in LIS degrees. But also then looking at now the new profiles and new skills. So I mean, the first aspect was just looking at what are the core skills and what is it that we offering in our degrees, what is it that our users would LIS professionals would like to see in the degrees. And I mean, this is related to also for IR, and it's not any different because they're all technology mediated. So because of all these evolutions in terms of how technology has influenced what we do, we've seen there's new profiles and new skills that are required from librarians. We know that the traditional LIS knowledge and skills, we need to reconceptualize those in terms of the use of new technologies. So the same thing where we're now using web GUI instead of the big books that we used to have. Looking at this, so taking our traditional or core knowledge skills in the discipline, and from that context and moving with those into now the digital information space. So looking at this in terms of what Schack and Bells look at 2011, looks at librarian blending of the traditional skills of librarianship with information technology, looking at the hardware and software skills and how one can blend that, but also in terms of the educational designer's capacity, so being able to apply technology to teaching and learning. So this is where the informational and instructional design comes in. So it's not just having the technology, having our traditional skills, but also the ability to actually apply that in teaching and learning is regarded as one of those new skills in terms of the disruptive technologies. And also an aspect, I think an approach rather by Coral 2010 that speaks to content, congruent, and context in terms of looking at how these new skills and new profiles one can approach it. And in essence, Coral speaks to the whole idea of blending the traditional skills, the whole idea of hybridization of competencies and also in the information professional. So looking at then the content in terms of the academic librarian or public librarian, but then blending that with the congruent in this case, which is the IT and infrastructure that one utilizes. So almost what our means to the end, but also looking then at the context, which could be the professional teaching and learning or pedagogical professional working in different disciplinary domains. So this approach, I think, if we could utilize it, whether with 4IR or with the next evolution, I think this could actually help us in terms of LIS schools to keep up, but also to work with the different stakeholders to understand from a content, congruent, and also context, how we can take advantage of these different changes in our space. And blending more than anything, the traditional knowledge and skills with IT, instructional design, and so on. And also this is one I thought worth mentioning. And this is just some of what academic librarians would like to see in terms of preparation degrees, whether an undergrad or postgrad, things that are the gaps, things that we're not covering yet as LIS schools. Computer hardware, so being able to understand the computer hardwares that we use in our libraries, looking at programming, computer software. Programming keeps coming up, and we know we can see the importance of that. And with 4IR and also other technologies, if one can program, one can write code, or even not even just writing code, but understanding the code, one can actually utilize and actually take advantage of these different technologies. But beyond that, we've seen data analysis tools and data cleansing, data analysis, analytics. This has become a critical aspect, digital preservation, and this is something libraries have been doing, digital librarianship and so on. So now another aspect I will look at is the education training needs as perceived by stakeholders. So just now we just looked at what are our core knowledge skills, and also what are the new profiles and new skills and gaps that have been identified by librarians that they think that they need to navigate the space, but also what has been identified then by other stakeholders in this space in terms of what LIS schools can do and just even the profession we can do. And obviously, the disruptive innovations have led to an increase in the demand for IT skills. This is something that's not new. And this is impacting not just LIS services, but also in terms of the education side, because then the LIS education is supposed to prepare the graduates for the different environments that our graduates are working in, and speaking to them the need for pedagogical skills. And we know over the years, I mean, there's been a disconnect that is, I mean, a lot of scholars have written about the gaps in terms of what is happening in practice, in terms of LIS professionals that are practicing and what is being taught in our LIS schools. And here we also have been seeing an increasing importance of, I mean, I keep rehashing the whole pedagogical knowledge and skills and how LIS schools are responding to that. And I mean, I take the example of how many librarians that now are doing things that they never really learned in LIS schools. And I think this is also not unique to LIS. I think it's it's a trend across different disciplines, where one would probably learn things like a problem solving in LIS schools, but others will probably learn on the job. And I'll speak to also how we can actually collaborate with LIS schools to ensure that we respond well to the different skills and knowledge that we require for LIS professionals to navigate the space. But also, I mean, I spoke to the idea of IT adopting or blending IT that needs to be contextualized into in LIS disciplinary specialties. So where we teaching computer software, or we're teaching information architecture, and how that needs to be contextualized to LIS, that how that is being taught in computer science and information systems might be slightly different, but we need to, as LIS, to contextualize this in order to be able to respond to what our stakeholders might require or need, and our users might need for practice more than anything. And just thought I'd highlight just some of the skills that have been identified in relation to 4IR. I mean, so this makes comparison between what was regarded as top skills in 2015 and also 2020, which speaks to complex problem solving. And I think this is something that's actually quite important, especially because we know LIS schools, I don't think they're able to cover everything. And at times, I mean, that's why we've got some programs at undergrad, postgrad, and so on. However, I think complex problem solving, regardless if someone is at an undergrad level, this is something that's covered already by the CHE standard for the bachelor's degree in LIS. And I think this is something that's also covered by the IFLA standards. It's IFLA framework on LIS education. And in essence, problem solving does not just help someone to solve LIS-related problems or problems in their assessments, but also to when one now has a knowledge gap, one can go and actually find the right information, which then speaks to also the whole idea of continuous professional development, but also self-directed learning, but also critical thinking. Being able to navigate different spaces, whether one has actually been exposed to or not. And I think this is skills that at times we might overlook because one is looking at 4IR and just it being the technical skills, but also these soft skills, if we may call them, are quite important in terms of working with that technical skills. I don't think those technical skills, we can overlook them, but I think they work well together. Creativity and innovation, the people management aspect, I mean, we still need to navigate our human relationships. It's not just the technology that is important in this space, emotional intelligence and so on. And I think this is things that we probably don't emphasize enough in terms of LIS education, and even professionals in the training, where we focus a lot on the technical skills when we talk about this blending of the knowledge and skills. But I think this are actually quite important soft skills. So which comes back to the idea of competencies, where it's knowledge, the skills, personal attributes that are important for any LIS professional to be able to navigate this space. In the next, I'll just take the next few minutes to speak to. I mean, I spoke about a number of aspects and what is being done and where the gaps are, but now I'll just focus on to some of the LIS responses to 4IR, and obviously this is we know. LIS schools, they're evolving, they're adapting to the challenges and also opportunities that are presented by 4IR, where the technology, there's a few, the lines are being blurred between the physical and the digital and so on. And we know some LIS schools and spaces that have done probably quite advanced, and they've done quite a lot in this space, while others they're still in their earlier stages. And obviously this is also specific to the different contexts and realities. But I think, as also Dr. Moyo spoke to in his introduction, in terms speaking to the curriculum updates, this is something that is continuously happening and should actually continuously be happening in LIS programs in South Africa and anywhere else, where courses are being revised to include the critical skills that are required to navigate this digitally evolving space, such as your critical thinking, ethical thinking. We know, this is something that as librarians we've been doing for years, that critical thinking, ethical thinking around privacy for our users now in the digital space, and also just revising and checking if our curriculum is still fit for purpose, including topics that are relevant, such as your data science, digital curation, information ethics, digital literacies. This is some topics that have been embedded in LIS in some schools more than others. And also another aspect is digital skills. Obviously, if one has to be able to navigate this space, one would have to have the digital skills. We've seen that there's a growing emphasis in LIS with equipping students with digital skills, data analysis, data visualization, and programming. And we've seen this more in the schools that actually do focus on library science rather than just library studies, where there's that technical focus on data to prepare our students for data-driven nature of 4IR, but also data understanding of digital libraries and repositories and how that works, which also speaks to information architecture, which was mentioned as a lot of LIS graduates in terms of some gaps and areas that should be embedded in LIS curriculum. But also open access and open science, emphasizing principles of open access and open science. These are essential, for 4IR, because this is looking at sharing of research outputs and also sharing information resources openly. And we know, open access and open science, this is something that's not new, but we've seen the opportunities that are being afforded by 4IR, and also the skills that are necessary for even our librarians being able to manage those repositories and so on. And more than anything, I don't think LIS schools in South Africa and anywhere else can do this alone. We've seen a lot of it, partnerships and collaborations with different stakeholders in terms of equipping the graduates and just LIS practicing professionals with the necessary skills. I know the National Library of South Africa, this is something they do, where they have a programs where new graduates actually get to be exposed to what is happening in the field, and they can learn certain skills that they might not have been able to learn through their courses because of different challenges and realities of many LIS schools that we have in the country. and also being able, to bridge that digital divide, supporting innovation. So this is something that collaboration with different stakeholders, like even LIS, that schools can actually benefit from. And I think forums like this also are quite important, where we can have the discussions around how do we actually move the discipline forward, because I don't think this is something that can be done by just schools alone, but also looking at professional development and lifelong learning. I think this is something we could never take for granted, that schools might actually provide that pedagogical knowledge, but we know the skills at times and the knowledge, and also how those keep evolving and the evolving competencies. This has to be a continuous process where LIS professionals engage in lifelong learning, and they equip themselves with the different things. And we've seen multiple programs in LIS and other stakeholders offering that. But also advocacy. I think this is an aspect where in terms of 4IR and policies related to that, this is an area where schools can actually equip professionals with the knowledge in terms of advocating for policies and initiatives that would promote access to information. And also speaking about digital inclusion, we know our users come from very diverse socioeconomic backgrounds, and then libraries provide that space, that equitable space. So that advocacy is an aspect within 4IR, but extending that role to in 4IR digital inclusion, recognizing the importance of equitable access to information in the 4IR space. Information and ethics, privacy. This is something that libraries have been doing, and I think schools have been teaching, but also how do we extend that now into this 4IR space? Ethical considerations, being able to emphasize the digital age and issues related to privacy, intellectual property, and security. And if librarians and professionals understand this, then that could be also, our users then would be able to be trained to understand how to navigate this space. Digital preservation, that's something that I think would continue, and libraries have been doing for a while. And also emerging technologies, then being exposing LIS professionals in terms of emerging technologies, workshops, courses, introducing these emerging technologies. We've had of virtual reality, and we've seen it also in conferences with vendors demonstrating different things, augmented reality, blockchain, Internet of Things. And this is, this continues, but I think being able to keep up and being abreast with emerging technologies and having this in the curriculum is quite important. But also we've seen an important aspect where researching in terms of 4IR topics, where scholars, researchers, and others are conducting research in these areas, and also looking into, solutions as a school, areas where we can take opportunity as a discipline. And this is important, that also from a research perspective, that we do our own research as a discipline. We do not have computer science and others telling us what to do and how to navigate the space, but we actually do research around these topics. And there's multiple responses that LIS schools could have to this area, and I think this is something we've seen schools adopting already. But we know from our perspective in South Africa, and I think just in the global South, we need to adopt a critical adoption of and then embedding on have a critical adoption, and also how we be critical about how we embedding these technologies to support service delivery, but also be cognizant of the realities of our students as LIS schools, but also from LIS professionals, being cognizant of the realities of the users that we're serving, and making sure that whatever tools and services that we adopt, that in essence we do not leave anyone behind. So thoughts just in closing, looking at some considerations to take from here, and and something also that we can probably have a look at in the Q&A. A lot of LIS associations, not necessarily just associations, communities, they have standards in terms of how LIS programs are run. And I mean, we know the importance of autonomy, but I think South Africa, and I think I can safely speak also on the continent, in terms of the continent, because I know AFLIA has been trying to standardize LIS education across the continent. But and we've seen, I mean, standards from IFLA coming in terms of assisting and sharing best practices in this space. So this is an area that one could probably consider and how we navigate this space. And it's not just with 4IR, but I think generally moving forward, that as a community of professionals, we have our differences, but I think we could utilize some standard framework to guide our professional work, that we don't have institutions like UCT or like UP that might be doing certain things and might be doing them well. And then we've got other institutions that then there's uneven experiences, or even so experiences across our institutions and what even our graduates get. So some standardization might be a consideration, but we know that comes also with all its own challenges. And I guess the issue of autonomy comes in also. But I think more than anything, the transformation of libraries, I mean, it drives the transformation of LIS education. Hence, I think it's important for us to have conversations. I don't think LIS education can thrive or even create the blended or librarian that's able to navigate this space on their own. But this needs to be a conversation between the libraries as they transform, with also LIS education, re-envisioning main principles and concepts in this new rapidly evolving technology-driven information context. That needs to be a collaboration between LIS education and libraries, or even LIS professionals. And also, I think it's important that one utilizes and we take advantage of the opportunities that are being provided by technology. We can now collaborate and do projects and work on things together without having to all be in Northwest. We can all be across the country, and this is, I mean, and having such forums and conversations, I think this is a step towards how we can work together and transform LIS education. But I think it's important to note what Ochola 2021 speaks about in terms of our responses to 4IR and our responses, I guess, to any technological developments and evolutions. Our responses cannot be uniform. We serve different students as LIS schools. We serve different users as library professionals. So our responses cannot be uniform, but I think there's core principles that we need to have in whatever responses that we have, and that will be contextualized to a particular institution, to a particular country, region, and being cognizant of those socioeconomic realities and also technological inequalities, because we wouldn't want to leave anyone behind, because some institutions are ahead of the curve or have adopted the various technologies. And just in closing, I think some takeaways probably, and some things to think about in terms of how LIS is it responding to 4IR. I think we've seen, I mean, the need for epistemological repositioning. And this is not just new to 4IR. This has been happening throughout the different disruptive innovations that we've seen. But also, we know a lot of times this has been spoken about, and we've seen also in conferences and so on being presented about the importance of self-directed learning, and also what is referred to as pedagogical approach, collaboration, partnership. I don't think we can emphasize this too much with different stakeholders, whether it is the National Library, the different LIS, being able to be a forum where all the LIS schools can come together, as well as LIS professionals, and discuss and work towards what we see as the best response as a country. Encouraging and developing CPD options. I mean, continuous professional development, we've seen it being important. And I think this is an area where the different stakeholders can work together and can offer viable options and encourage CPD where this knowledge, skills, and other important or relevant aspects can be learned by LIS professionals. But I think what also we're seeing from what the different scholars have mentioned from socioeconomic different socioeconomic realities, but also looking at technological inequalities, that the solutions or how we navigate this space or how we respond, it needs to be context-based, it needs to be inclusive, look at inclusive solutions to this rapidly evolving technological-driven context, that we don't just adopt technology just for the sake of technology or whatever tools that FOIR provides us, but obviously we look at it as a means to an end, as means to connecting to our users, as means to enabling LIS professionals to have the right skills that they require for them to do certain tasks and jobs. And I thought there was an important quote to share by Prof. Raju 2021, which speaks to, as scholars, educators, students, professional practitioners, we have a role to play in this epistemological repositioning and the way in which it shapes future LIS education directed at blended and professionals in a pluralist information environment. So I don't think this is something that can be done by one group. It can't be done just by the educators. It can't just be done by the professional practitioners. But this is a multifaceted problem, if you would call it that, or opportunity more than anything, where as a discipline, we need to come together with LIASA, with this different scholars, educators, students in this space, that we can craft a path that would work for us in South Africa. And I mean, that could be also something that other countries or learn from what might have been done already in the continent. But this is something that we need to collaborate and work on in order to direct and reimagine and reposition LIS. So just in closing, I don't think this is a question of relevance of LIS schools and 4IR, but I think it's a question of collaboration of LIS stakeholders, whether from scholars, students, educators, and LIS professionals, on how we can craft and actually reposition LIS to ensure that our LIS professionals, we can create a blended professional that's able to navigate this information environment. And I think this is an important aspect, speaking to Coral's approach in terms of content, congruence, and also context. They're quite important in how we reposition LIS education and navigate how we work together in terms of this blended professional. But also, I think critical embedding of technologies is important for us because of our location in South Africa, but also in the global South, that we adopt the technologies, we use the means as technology affords us to connect with our users and to use data to tell stories and to make business decisions. But we use it to actually help us to do what, as a discipline, what is important to us, connecting our users to information and making sure that we don't leave any of our users behind. Thank you very much. I'll stop my sharing. Matt, over to you, or is it Winnie?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Anderson, for such a wonderful, insightful presentation. And I believe it has answered a lot of, or some of the questions that we had, because this is a burning, actually, issue within the LIS profession. And it also gives us guidance on how LIS education can be repositioned. And when it comes to LIASA as well, to really collaborate with other stakeholders as well in order to make sure that we are well positioned. Thank you so much again, and thank you to UCT for this opportunity that they afforded us. With questions now, it's time. Anybody with questions, please feel free to just raise your hand, or you can write also within our chats. Thank you so much. Any questions?
Winile, if you can move closer to your mic, we can hardly hear you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm sorry about that. I hope I'm audible enough now.
Yes, it's better now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Moy. I just said thank you to Dr. Andy Sampeku for such an insightful presentation, which I believe it answered some of our questions that we had regarding the LIS schools or the LIS education, and how can we probably reposition the LIS profession going forward, or just education. So we've learned a lot from this, especially as we had also questions on the skills. We see now, especially UCT, I'm one of the students, you spoke about digital information literacy, you spoke about coding, which was one of the hardest, I think, modules that we did. It was very hard, but I think you gain a lot because you learn how to design websites, which is good. It's one of the skills that we need as LIS graduates. Thank you so much. Anybody with a question can either write or just open your mic and ask. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for attending.
Can I share a question? I have a question, Winile, while we're waiting for a question to come up. I think we talk about a lot of how we need to embed IT in what we do as LIS schools and so on. But a challenge I keep finding as a young academic in this space is also the fact that when we start embedding technology, let's say programming, a simple thing as if I come now to the PGD group or master's group and I'm like, we're going to do introduction to Python. And our students kind of give you that look as like, I did not sign up for computer science, or I did not sign up for information systems. And I think this is a challenge. Different schools are dealing with this differently. How then we're trying to also shift how we think about our discipline, where it's not just traditional but we actually can say, well, we're going to actually do programming, and that is important for us to understand programming, whether we're going to program or if we have to advise our programmer in the library on the different aspects. So I think a mentality change is probably important also from students, where they take LIS because maybe it might seem a bit easier, and then we say, no, we're actually going to do programming, and then they give you that look. And the same would apply with statistics. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mpeku. We'll take a question from Dr. Matthew Moyo, and yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Winile. I think Dr. Mfengu has actually addressed my question around the aspect of computer science. But I just wanted to find out in terms of the skills that you are envisaging, programming and so on and so on, particularly those that are too technical. Is it something that all staff members within our library environment should embrace, or they should be left to those that are more technical, like our systems librarians and so on?
Thank you very much, Dr. Moyo, for that question. I'll respond to this one before we take another one we need. I think you're raising a very important point. And we need to be realistic in the sense that we're not looking at, if we try to create super specialized librarians, we run the challenge of them not having people that can move around to the different roles. So now we've got 4 and we want probably a good number of librarians to an understanding of programming. And I think this is where then it comes in. So we want our librarians to fit in the different spaces. So I think we're looking at more the general understanding, whether it's programming, whether it's data analytics or data science. So that understanding is important. Then when a need arises for maybe someone to do something on programming, then at least from that understanding, someone can build up. So we think generally we would want to see most librarians to have an understanding, which is then we've been looking at mostly just starting from a knowledge base, and then those skills can be built up, because then if we try to create also super specialized librarians, then we run the risk that when we've moved on to 5IR, what happens then to those super specialized people? Can they move on to those newer skills? Because we've seen librarians over the years having to juggle different roles to move as the need arises, because and I think that's how no one is talking about 4IR and jobs being lost, because librarians are reskilling and doing what is expected as needed from their workplaces. So I think some understanding, not necessarily we're trying to create experts in that area. We still, I think the basic understanding is experts in librarianship with the different understanding of our related areas. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the question and the answer. We're going to move forward to Mr. Collins. You may ask your question. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Andisco, for such a superb presentation on the seismic shifts within the LIS landscape and also within LIS institutions. I would maybe mine is not really a question, but maybe a suggestion on the need for LIS schools also to think about such issues pertaining to data sovereignty, knowledge sovereignty, the coloniality of knowledge, the coloniality of technology, because in this current data-driven dispensation, information knowledge-driven dispensation, we see that there seem to be like a surge in what we can call the colonialism of data, where data is mined and harvested by multinational companies that are located in the global north, without any consideration of compensating those in the global south who generate this data. So this is a very topical issue that we are grappling with as well within the IFLA Indigenous Matters section on issues to do with this new form of capitalism where data has become the new oil. And do we have sovereignty over the data that we generate? Do we have sovereignty over the knowledge that we generate? And also, secondly, the issue pertaining to what do we do about, decolonizing the LIS curriculum within the context of 4IR. I know it's a challenge because of the fact that maybe we do not own these technologies per se. Hence, the issue of coloniality of technology and coloniality also of knowledge, because we don't own most of the databases that house knowledge that we generate. So I thought that could also be an issue that could be taken into consideration so that our LIS schools become also very apt in grappling with this new phenomenon with regards to what is it that we can control in terms of our sovereign right as people of the global south. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Collins. I fully agree. I think this is something, where we look at the critical approach to technologies that we adopt, that we do not just adopt them just because someone says they're good and that's what everyone is adopting. So yeah, I think this is critical, and this is something I think in LIS schools we need to also, I think, sensitize and make our professionals aware, and also students from ethics, privacy, the biases in the systems that we utilize, and how do we counter that, and what can we do, or just even at times one might just be raising awarenesses. Might be all that librarians can do, but I think there's important aspects to actually have and make our librarians, students, and aware. Yes, decolonization. I think that's something that whether with 4IR or not, the principles are there, because then I don't think we look at decolonization just as a matter of I will use a system that's developed in Africa. But it goes beyond, the readings that we do. It goes beyond the systems, but it's how we approach our teaching. So how the approaches that we use in the that, whether in 4IR or not, I think is an important aspect that is intertwined in what we do and embedded in our curriculum as LIS schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the question and answer. I would like Prof. Raju to have a question as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Renele. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. And mine is more, it's not a question. I want to begin by commending Andiswa, a young academic, an emerging scholar, for the very inclusive way in which in today's presentation, the way she brought together professional practice and education. I want to reiterate a point that she made in her presentation, and something that I feel really strongly about, is that, she spoke about the fact that no one group can effect an epistemological repositioning. She speaks about, she had something on the screen that's on her slides that said, something to the effect that we take our lead from each other. Quite often there's this misnomer that we've got to wait for LIS schools to come up with things that are innovative, creative, to create the new, the graduate fit for the 21st century. But quite often when I look at what happens, for example, at a place like University of Pretoria or for that matter, the University of Cape Town, we as schools very often are actually taking our lead from what is happening in the world of practice. We see the innovation happening before us. Aspects of 4IR or 5IR being converted in the workplace. And that is where we bring in our curriculum innovation, etc., touching on a lot of the things that Dr. Collins mentioned just now, associated with coloniality and decoloniality. So I think it's very important that we see this as a shared space. The initiation for change epistemological shift and repositioning, reimagining, etc., the responsibility, as Andiswa pointed out, sits not just with the LIS schools, but also sits with the world of practice. So I've got no question as such, but I just want to commend Andiswa for her wonderful and very thoughtful presentation, and also for us to take away some of those important lessons that she put down in her concluding slides as takeaways. Thank you very much, Winile, for giving me a chance to make a comment.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, for the comment. Thank you. And our last one is, I'm not sure whether I'm going to be able to spell it well, but it's January. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, you did pronounce it correctly. It's Jean-Marie for sure. I apologize, I came late to the session, but my question is just, is there a market for the skills that you are advocating, data analysis and so forth, in the LIS environment? Is there a market for people to upskill themselves in that? Because I feel like the market is mostly in the private sector, and in libraries there isn't enough opportunity to upskill and to be, to use those skills, those types of skills. Because if you're battling with an internet connection, how are you now supposed to do all of the 4R technologies and the AI and all of that? So is there opportunity, is there a market for those skills?
Thank you very much for that question. And I think the reality on the ground, I mean, that's important to acknowledge the realities. And also, I think this comes back to the aspect that there's no one solution for everyone. Whether we all are in South Africa, even across the different provinces, we're going to have to use different solutions, or also navigate this 4IR space differently. Academic libraries a lot might, depending on also where one is sitting. So I know when looking at UCT, data analysis, I mean, it's a big aspect where librarians would get data from different databases and different sources, and that is used to make decisions. Whether do we renew that journal? Is the return on investment in terms of the subscriptions that we are making? So a lot of it, I mean, the data analysis, analytics, just applying your typical data science aspects is, in essence, it's supposed to provide insight. It's supposed to give libraries data that and see patterns in the usage in different aspects that can be utilized to make better decisions. And obviously, a lot of this is coming from the business space, but it can be applied also in libraries, and more in some libraries than others. And the realities, I mean, of infrastructure, resources, load shedding, connection, that might not necessarily apply to some libraries because of those local realities. But I think, I mean, we're starting out now. I'm sure 10 years down the line, this would be someone's job in libraries, where all that person needs to do is actually analyze the data, is actually to provide the librarians or the executives with the data they can use to make decisions on spending, decisions on what programs, services should they continue with or not continue with, and so on, because all of that is actually just based on the data. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Dr. Collins again.
Oh, yes, mine is just an addition also. I don't know what also Dr. Andiswa, you think about the idea of incorporating within the LIS training a component of skills that can be a basis for an industry based on independent information practice, where our graduates can also partner with those that are maybe in the industry and are nearing retirement, but still have the energy and the zeal to go on. And then they partner to create independent information practices as a way of creating an alternative opportunity for employment and engagement. In such areas as information consultancy, information brokerage, information mediation, and consolidation, among other areas. And this could ultimately metamorphose into a professional association of independent information practitioners or consultants who are drawn from the LIS, since independent information practice is an offshoot of LIS. So this was just a suggestion also in terms of creating that niche for our graduates within the LIS industry, considering that information and knowledge, data are now key factors of production, just like land, labor, and capital. And so an economy, a robust economy, could be built from small beginnings within that particular area that I'm suggesting. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Collins. I think certainly that's probably a trend that we're going to see in future, also in South Africa. I mean, I know in Nigeria, there's been lots already written about infopreneurship, where information is that's like the currency in the business, or what someone is all about. So you provide, and I think this is, something that librarians are doing already, but I guess the difference is that one is doing that and serving users in an institution, whether it's UCT or UWC and so on. But this could actually apply in different spaces where one would consult with you, and they say, I need this information, and instead of being part of an affiliated to an institution, this one can do this independently. I don't see why we wouldn't go in that direction. And obviously, I think when we look at the Nigeria, in terms of unemployment rates growing in that area, not just for LIS graduates, but graduates across, so that they've seen an area where individuals don't need to necessarily wait for employment, but one can actually advertise their services and assist users broadly that don't necessarily need to register to any institution, but they need information, and they can pay for that information. So I think that's probably something we probably might see also in the country, because we see also information can be overwhelming and overload a lot of people, and depending on also the demand and supply. Some people might be willing to pay for that. Some people might have other needs where well, I'd rather go to my library and ask my public librarian, and because our libraries are free, and I might wait it out if the library can provide me or assist me with that. So I think, yeah, it is definitely something that maybe we might even have to consider in terms of LIS. How does one then brand themselves in terms of the saying this as a business, where one can assist users across, because I think that demand might actually grow because of information overload and that actually would probably translate not just in information, but also in terms of data, and how librarians then can utilize and analyze that data, or to get some insights from that data, synthesize it, and then provide it for the users, which is already things librarians are doing with your bibliometrics, altmetrics for us as researchers, in terms of evidencing their impact and so on. So definitely, I think that's an area that you might go through, but it's quite interesting if you look at our discipline and the principles of openness when we start selling information and helping whoever. It probably just would be interesting how that would turn out in practice, actually.
Yeah, because I've seen other countries like UK, Belgium, they have these chartered institutes for independent information practitioners. Their role mainly is that they monetize their services, and most of the people there are drawn from the library and information sector, and also maybe closely related disciplines like archives, media, the GLAM sector, and etc. So thanks a lot for that response on the entrepreneurial trust in the future.
Thank you so much to everybody for participating and for joining. And thank you so much to Dr. Mfengu for your wonderful, informative presentation. Indeed, we learned a lot today. But I still have actually a question, even though you really answered about some of the information science graduates not waiting for maybe jobs or to be hired somewhere. But my question is, at which point or when is LIS schools actually reflect and check if maybe they've produced enough or a lot, and now try to find other ways to actually maybe give programs that will actually help to reskill the professionals. So because we've seen a lot of graduates who are not working, and also with LIASA people, probably they can answer this question because they are our professional body. What can be done? Or maybe they've produced enough LIS graduates. I'm not sure about that because I've seen a lot of them who are struggling to find jobs actually. So before then, when now we commercialize our services, then at the present moment, what can be done? Thank you so much.
I think what you're asking is a very interesting question, Winnie, and I think it's not just for LIS. I think as a country, we all are suffering, I guess, from the same broader issues of unemployment. And we know, I mean, if one looks at at Nigeria, what we're experiencing in South Africa and high unemployment rates, probably they've experienced it like 5 years ago, and the situation is just getting worse. So I guess it's looking at this and seeing it's not just an LIS issue, but it's also a national issue where government is trying and whatever they're doing in terms of getting with this private sector, or just to kind of create enough jobs because we've got more graduates. Even, I mean, engineering and medicine, which back at some stage in life, they were like, if you got a degree from those disciplines, you would be hired the next day. We've got doctors, engineers that are without jobs. So this is not unique to LIS. But I think this comes back to how LIS, I guess, whether we call it staying relevant or seeing areas where we should take we should take control in rather than allowing information systems or computer science to come in. And this is something, whether that is in a form of revising or changing the content in the programs that we currently have, or having different courses or different things. And as a department, I mean, I can make an example with that. So we have what we call advisory board. So the advisory board meets once every year. An advisory board is actually so we have stakeholders from a different GLAM sectors, and we've got academics also from whether it's your film and media and others. So this is a group of people that would not normally have conversations, but then we say this is what we're doing and this is what we're offering, and then we get advice as a school in terms of this is the trends in practice, like how Prof. Raju was mentioning about how sometimes, I mean, our academic libraries and other libraries are doing things that we probably are still battling with as schools, but they already are ahead of the curve. So things like your advisory board and other forums, this is also could be a way where LIS schools, we can keep in touch with what's happening and have conversations that can hopefully revise our curriculum. And as a school from this year, we actually started a servicing course. So it's not part of any of our programs, not part of the postgraduate diploma or master's or the PhD, but it's actually a first-year course offered across the humanities faculty. And the course is Introduction to Social Informatics. So in essence, we are taking what we're good at, what we do as LIS, and we repackaging that, or for a lack of a better concept, repackaging that and offering it not just to librarians, but to anyone who would like to understand how to navigate information, data, and just in essence be able to answer certain social sciences and humanities problem using technology. So this is something that also schools are doing, and that also one way to use our expertise in a different form, but also to stay viable as schools. I don't think a lot of young people now, if someone is looking at jobs, they're like, okay, what is more attractive, or what would get me employed? So this is also, whether it's new programs, new digital curation, I know for us was new, few years, 7-8 years ago. And we've seen how many graduates have signed up for that. And we probably need to consider new areas that maybe we haven't explored as LIS, and then we can offer, whether it's programs, courses, in that case, but also still using our core knowledge and competences as a discipline, but in different spaces, and also identifying those gaps and filling them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mfeku, for everything. Thank you for taking your time for your presentation. We really appreciate you coming in and sharing this knowledge with us. Indeed, we're hoping that there will be a lot of changes even within the organization, LIASA, as we have learned a lot today. Thank you so much. We really appreciate. Thank you again. I will hand over to our elect chair to close for us. Thank you so much to everyone. Thank you. Chair-elect.
Thank you, Mayor Winnie. Am I audible enough?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Winnie, for ensuring that the program runs smoothly. And on behalf of LIASA Northwest Branch team, we'd like to give our gratitude to all of you. Dr. Moyo, Northwest University Libraries Director, for your great welcome and the manner in which we have introduced our guest. And Dr. Moyo, again, for being the role model to many librarians within the Northwest Province, and also for putting your heart and laying foundation in library and information services in Northwest Province. And our great gratitude goes to Dr. Andiswa Mfengu for honoring our invitation, taking your time to prepare, for sharing your expertise and very informative session. From your presentation, it poses a question to us, that is the manner in which libraries responding to the 4 IRs relevant and appropriate to the changes. And in your presentation, you reflect on different opportunities and challenges, and how globally has school libraries has responded to 4 IR, and how librarians can change and adapt to 4 IR by being innovative, and how they operate their roles and their competence. And our audience, thank you for also honoring and being part of this webinar. And lastly, to LIASA National Office, Apelele, and your team for always being there and for making sure that this session is a success. Thank you all. We thank you from Northwest Branch. Thank you and thank you. Thank you.
Thank you and goodbye.